Who the heck does he think he is?
At 7 o'clock, I'll be here with a 1-hour news special to look back on the day.
Will opinion polls get it wrong again?
Can legal challenges delay a result?
You're going to get a kick out of it.
Will America choose Trump, Biden or a descent into chaos?
We've been practicing chaos every week for years.
Tune in for a 2-hour Planet America special.
USA votes. All-day coverage Wednesday from 6 on ABC News.
The boss of Australia Post resigns over the Cartier watches scandal. Details of a long-awaited federal anti-corruption commission announced. Donald Trump and Joe Biden continue campaigning in battleground states with less than 24 hours until Election Day.
And coming up on The Business, self-inflicted wounds, Westpac's profits smashed by fines, a loss of customers and the virus.
Hello, welcome to ABC News. I'm Karina Carvalho. The Chief Executive of Australia Post has quit after an investigation was launched into the purchase of Cartier watches for senior executives. Christine Holgate has resigned with immediate effect and isn't seeking compensation. She says she regrets the purchase of the watches worth $20,000, admitting the issue has become a significant distraction for Australia Post. The resignation comes as the government announced long-awaited plans for a Commonwealth Integrity Commission, but its design is already under attack. From Canberra, here's political editor Andrew Probyn.
A new integrity cop's headed for the beat.
It has greater powers than a Royal Commission.
The Commonwealth Integrity Commission's already been 2 years in the making.
It'll have the power to arrest people, it'll have the power to intercept phone calls.
MPs, bureaucrats, public officials and law enforcement officers, all within the CIC's potential oversight. Not that they would necessarily know they're being watched.
It will also have the ability, its officers, to assume false identities for the purposes of investigation.
There'll be two divisions. One will have jurisdiction over law enforcement and agencies that have investigative functions, such as the AFP, Home Affairs and the Tax Office. The other will have jurisdiction over politicians, their staff, bureaucrats, universities and Commonwealth corporations.
This is what you paid.
The focus on integrity's been acute of late, whether it's taxpayers paying 10 times market price for a parcel of land at Sydney's next airport, or contested expense claims from the chair of the corporate watchdog and his deputy, money they've pledged to pay back. Matters of probity played out in the public glare, unlike the new integrity body that'll hold hearings mostly in private.
Public hearings build confidence in the integrity of our public administration.
The public part of the process will be in a court.
There'll be a 6-month consultation on the Integrity Commission's final shape. Where the hearings should be held publicly, already the hottest point of difference. The government argues state anti-corruption hearings have all too often become show trials that have unjustifiably ruined careers, which is a little ironic given how the career of the Australia Post boss unravelled so publicly.
They got watches.
The gifting of Cartier watches saw Christine Holgate being ordered to stand aside by the Prime Minister.
And if she doesn't wish to do that, Mr Speaker, she can go.
Today came her resignation, Ms Holgate acknowledging the watches had failed to pass the pub test. Andrew Probyn, ABC News, Canberra.
As the US election enters its closing stage, Donald Trump and Joe Biden are zeroing in on the battleground states that could decide the outcome. The president is trailing in all the key polls, but his energy is undiminished. He's held rallies across 5 states and is confident, telling supporters he will win. His Democratic challenger is focused on Pennsylvania. We have 2 correspondents covering the campaign trail tonight. Catherine Diss is following Joe Biden. But first, David Lipson is in Florida, one of the states Donald Trump is targeting.
Not the freezing winds of Michigan.
It's a little tough out here.
Nor the surge in COVID cases everywhere can stop the Trump campaign blitz of America's battleground states.
I love you too. If I didn't, I wouldn't be standing here because it's freezing out here.
From Michigan to Iowa, North Carolina, and Georgia. And way down south to the tropical heat of Miami, Florida.
Wow, what a crowd.
Where the crowd chanted for him to fire his top infectious disease expert mid-pandemic.
Don't tell anybody, but let me wait till a little bit after the election.
Donald Trump is dancing to Election Day, determined to defy the polls and conventional wisdom once more. If he does prevail in Florida, this will be part of the story. Latinos coming out in force, prepared to face long lines to ensure their vote counts.
Who did you vote for today?
For Donald Trump. For Donald Trump. For Donald Trump. Libertad, respeto, economía. She said respect, freedom, and economy, and I say life.
These Cuban Americans escaped the Castro regime. Now they've fallen in with Donald Trump.
Because he is against communism, and that's basically why we love him.
A few kilometres away, a different beat aimed at getting more African Americans to the polls. But there are no lines of voters here, and that's got Democratic strategists worried about a soft turnout in the black community.
People feel like it's not going to have an impact regardless of who they vote for.
This is Donald Trump's 5th rally across 5 states, and he's showing no sign of slowing down. He's confident the energy generated by these rallies will be enough to pull him across the line to secure 4 more years in the White House. The big question is what happens to all this energy if he loses. David Lipson, ABC News, Miami.
Well, President Trump is capturing lots of enthusiasm at his rallies. Joe Biden's got the momentum in the polls. He holds a solid advantage nationally, though his lead in some of the key states is narrowing. North America correspondent Catherine Diss is following the Biden campaign.
Even in Joe Biden's home state of Delaware, Team Trump's got support.
I machine parts. A lot of it's for the oil and fracking industry. And if Joe Biden gets elected, I'm out of a job.
It's had 47 years to do it. I mean, I'm a Delaware native, and he's done nothing for us.
But this resentment for the career politician is a minority voice in this state. It's voted Democrat for more than 30 years and is likely to back Joe Biden.
He is a champion of all people, especially people that have suffered tragedies. As you've seen, he is an incredibly compassionate and moral man.
Elise Resnick's a lifelong Democrat. Her husband Ed was a Republican, but he says the party no longer follows the values he once backed.
I think Joe will win. My biggest concern is, will it be significant, a significant victory, and will the president try to tear it apart if it's not decided on election night?
He doesn't need to campaign in his home state, but just across the border here in Pennsylvania, he does. It's a crucial battleground and his safest path to the White House. He's currently ahead in the polls, but his margin is narrowing. Today, he embarked on a 2-day tour of the state, starting in the Democratic stronghold of Philadelphia.
With just 48 hours until Election Day, the 77-year-old took to the stage, showing no sign of tiring.
Hello, Philadelphia! 2 more days! 2 more days!
An unusually fired-up Joe Biden reminded Pennsylvania of the weight it holds.
The power to change this country, not figuratively, is literally in the hands of Philadelphia and Pennsylvania. So honk if you want America to lead again. And honk if you want America to be united again.
The polls still show Joe Biden should be able to end the Trump presidency, but he has to maintain the energy against a relentless campaigner. Catherine Diss, ABC News, Pennsylvania.
And don't forget, ABC News will have special coverage of the US election on November the 4th, starting at 6 o'clock in the morning with Michael Rowland in Washington for News Breakfast and Lisa Miller. On ABC TV and ABC News Channel from 10 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time, Stan Grant, Ellen Fanning and David Spears will be joined by election guru Anthony Green and Casey Briggs, along with our US correspondents and special guests to analyse the results as they come in. Lee Sales will host an ABC News special at 7 o'clock before Hamish McDonald and Julia Baird discuss some of the key issues that arise at the ballot box. Planet America has been the go-to destination for the 2020 election. And Chaz Lucidello and John Barron will have a special 2-hour show speaking to players from the Republican and Democratic camps. And rounding out the night, a special edition of The World with Beverly O'Connor. Deb Frecklington has stepped down as Queensland's opposition leader after the LNP's election defeat at the weekend. Ms Frecklington has taken full responsibility for the loss, but has also taken aim at the influence of the coronavirus pandemic on the election. Rachel Rieger reports.
Morning. Another LNP defeat, another leadership casualty.
I will ask my colleagues to appoint a new leader of the Liberal National Party. I will not be a candidate in the leadership contest.
A complete about-face from election night.
And I will continue as the leader of this great party.
A statement that raised eyebrows and anger in her camp, prompting serious talks, then a back down.
My first instinct is always to fight on. Since then, I've had a great day with my family and my husband, Jason, and reflected on my future.
She's taking the fall for the LNP's defeat.
I do take responsibility for the election loss. There is no doubt that COVID has had a huge impact on Queensland politics.
Ms Frecklington was elected to Parliament in 2012, representing Nanango in rural southern Queensland. She was quickly appointed Assistant Finance Minister under Premier Campbell Newman, later becoming the LNP's first female leader in 2017. Deb Frecklington's run was hindered by destabilisation from within her own organisation, a distraction she's admitted was unhelpful. But Ms Frecklington will continue as a local MP and says she'd love to serve in any position the new leader may give her. That's likely to depend on who that new leader will be. David Crisafulli and Tim Mander are the names being touted. Mr Crisafulli, a former Townsville MP, now on the Gold Coast, was a minister under Campbell Newman and has taken a hard-on-crime stance.
That's why the response from the LNP has been really strong on this, because it is the defining issue.
Mr Mander was also a minister in the Newman government, but as deputy LNP leader has close ties to Ms Frecklington.
This is a real opportunity for the LNP to distance from the Newman legacy and to, make a fresh start.
A party room meeting to elect the new leader will be held after election results are finalised. Rachel Rieger, ABC News, Brisbane.
The WA Premier says the Queensland election result is an endorsement of the use of a hard border to protect people from the spread of coronavirus. WA's own border closure will be the subject of a High Court hearing from tomorrow, with billionaire businessman Clive Palmer arguing the policy is unconstitutional. But Mark McGowan says the Queensland election result is vindication of a cautious approach to border policy.
I think it's an endorsement of a state government that's done everything it can to protect its citizens, and also a rejection of the sort of misleading and scare campaign put in place by Mr Palmer. Mr Palmer's campaign in Queensland was shameful, absolutely shameful, and people should not believe any of his ads, any of the material he puts around, because it's all based upon falsehoods.
As many Victorians enjoyed an extra long weekend, there was something else to celebrate. It's the third consecutive day Victoria has recorded 0 new COVID-19 cases and no deaths from the virus. But while people begin venturing out, the Hospitality Union is worried staff working across multiple venues could pose a risk of spreading the infection.
Victorians are relishing the chance to sit down for a meal. But restaurant workers like Yana Plexisakis are enjoying the other side of the transaction.
Financially, look, not working. It was difficult, but hopefully things will pick up and, we'll get the ball rolling and back to normal.
It was a long 5 months at home, but she never felt forgotten by her work.
They were always checking in on us just to make sure that we were okay psychologically, financially, and making sure that we were, as good as we can possibly be during these times.
But it was a tough time for many in the industry. A survey of 4,000 workers by a hospitality union has found 85% lost work at the height of the pandemic. Half lacked the savings to support themselves for a month, and a third accessed their super to get by.
I was ineligible for JobKeeper. I was one of the many people who lined up for 6 hours just to get Centrelink as the coronavirus hit.
There was a major increase, over 75% of those people saying what was most valuable to them coming out of the pandemic was to have secure employment. That is predictable hours, predictable pay.
As people return to dining out, there's a sense of relief that the infections continue to fall. Today, there are just 49 active cases in Victoria, and for a third straight day, there have been no new infections or deaths. The 14-day rolling average for Melbourne now stands at 1.9. In regional Victoria, it's 0, and there's just one mystery case hanging around. With the weather warming up, people have flocked to places like St Kilda Beach today to enjoy the sun. And while many Victorians are keen to shed their masks, the experts are warning against rushing the decision, describing them as low-cost insurance against another outbreak. Nicole Asher, ABC News, Melbourne.
The New South Wales border with Victoria could be open within weeks. The Premier Gladys Berejiklian has indicated she may make an announcement on Wednesday. As for the Queensland border, she's not so optimistic. Here's reporter Ashley Raper.
Anastasia Palaszczuk took her hardline border policy to the people and won. So her skirmish with the South looks set to continue.
I sent her a congratulatory message, especially acknowledging her election win in view of fighting a campaign in a pandemic, but also highlighted that I was keen to speak to her on the border issue, and I hope she takes up that opportunity.
So far, she hasn't.
There's nothing more important to the people of Queensland than making sure that we are delivering for them.
From tomorrow, Queensland's relaxed restrictions will come into effect. People from New South Wales will be able to visit the northern state, but Greater Sydney residents remain excluded.
There isn't a single place in Australia where New South Wales residents, all of us, should not be welcome.
And the New South Wales government's view has been endorsed by those wanting to get people travelling again.
They've shown that you actually can keep the economy open and you can keep borders open. And so we're hoping that other states in Australia start to open their borders.
And that includes the Victorian border. The New South Wales government now seems less apprehensive about reopening to that state. The Premier hinted that an announcement is imminent and could even be made on Wednesday.
I wouldn't be surprised if we moved more quickly against Victoria than Queensland did against us. We're talking weeks, not months, in terms of when the Victorian border may come down.
A signal that the border is likely to be open before Christmas. Ashley Raper, ABC News, Sydney.
The Australian economy could shrink by 6% over the next 50 years, according to a new report from Deloitte Access Economics. The report found the economy will lose more than $3 trillion if climate change is not urgently addressed. 850,000 jobs could be lost, with regions in the north and west the hardest hit.
The Deloitte report predicts a frightening future for trade, mining and tourism, industries most exposed to climate change.
And leaving it go till 50 years' time to really get serious about it, it's just too late.
Paul Crocombe has run a scuba diving business from Townsville for 30 years. His worry is the survival of the Great Barrier Reef and Deloitte's prediction that global warming will kill off hundreds of thousands of jobs.
With those job losses, it'll just totally devastate our business and probably most of the tourism industry in North Queensland.
Rockhampton builder Mitch McDowell is also concerned.
It is scary. Once it gets too hot up there, you just have to hop down. Like sometimes you can't pick up your drill or your screws and stuff like that because they get that hot, they start to burn.
The report details the necessity to be carbon neutral by 2050 and to keep warming below 1.5 degrees.
If we let emissions go unconstrained,
that this will have an impact on the economy.
It looked at a series of damages from sea levels to heat stress and their impact on tourism to trade, and came up with $3 trillion in losses and 880,000 jobs gone nationally. WA and the Northern Territory would be hit hard, but Queensland's set to suffer the most.
If we have unchecked climate change, then Queensland will lose about 50% of the jobs that Australia loses.
Its challenge to government and industry is to fast-track zero emissions targets, bringing with it a $700 billion gain to the economy, along with 250,000 new jobs. But Prime Minister Scott Morrison has previously ruled out a 2050 deadline, promising to be carbon neutral in the second half of this century.
So what we're seeing here is dangerous inaction from the Morrison government on climate change, which will cost jobs and smash the economy.
The federal government does have a roadmap, though, to prioritise hydrogen, carbon capture and storage, and things like low-carbon steel, for example. And while those projects would reduce emissions, the report says they're just not enough to reach the zero target in time.
The more we delay, the more damage is being done.
Lexi Hamilton-Smith, ABC News.
At least 16 people have died after the world's strongest typhoon this year barreled through the south of the Philippines' main island of Luzon. Wind gusts of 280 kilometres an hour struck densely populated regions and triggered mud flows that engulfed homes before it weakened and blew out to sea. Hundreds of thousands of people sought shelter in evacuation centres, with individual tents to help protect them from coronavirus. Typhoon Goni came days after another typhoon hit areas further south. Now a third storm is threatening the north of Luzon Island. Thousands of Indonesians are protesting against France's President Emmanuel Macron's stance on cartoons depicting the Prophet Muhammad. The demonstrators are demanding the French ambassador be expelled. Muslim hardliners have rallied in several countries against France's leader, who has defended freedom of speech and says Islam is in crisis all over the world. The Thai king has described Thailand as a land of compromise in his first public comments about the growing pro-democracy movement in Bangkok. The institution has faced an unprecedented challenge from student-led protesters who want an overhaul of the government and changes to the monarchy. Under increasing pressure, the king met thousands of royalists who had gathered outside the Grand Palace to show their support. Southeast Asia correspondent Zoe Ford reports.
After a 7-hour wait in the Bangkok heat, these royalists finally got what they came for, a meet and greet with their king and queen.
I'm thrilled. I'm so grateful. I can't compare it to anything.
Their devotion is in stark contrast to the demands of pro-democracy protesters, who for 3 months have called for government reform and curbs to the king's power and wealth. There's been no official comment from the palace until now, with the king giving a brief statement when questioned by a reporter in the crowd.
Your Majesty, sir, these people love you, but what do you say to the protesters who've been on the streets who want reform?
I have no comment. We love them all the same. We love them all the same. We love them all the same.
Is there any room for compromise, sir?
Thailand is a land of compromise.
His loyal supporters are hoping to see an end to the political impasse.
I really don't want Thais fighting each other. I want everyone to love each other.
Protest leaders aren't as hopeful. They've dismissed the king's comments as just words. Zoe Ford, ABC News.
Another person has been pulled alive from a collapsed building 2 days after an earthquake